And thank you for your opening statement and highlighting the essential role of high quality early years care and education that we know enhances children's holistic development. I think of considerable concern is your point that the state spends just 0.3% of GDP on early years, which is well below the European average of 0.8%, and the UNICEF recommendation benchmark of 1%. So I take it we can assume the rest is left up to families to make the difference, which explains why childcare is so incredibly expensive. You highlight that pay is the most significant factor for people out of the profession. I'm wondering if funding was increased for pay in Budget 2020, how could we ensure that it goes to staff? We also know that this is primarily a female sector, as you mentioned, and it's important to acknowledge how sectoral pay issues contribute to the gender pay gap, as does, of course, the absence of a state provision for childcare. But a survey you released earlier this year showed that 90% of childcare workers struggle to make ends meet, 7% have no work, sick pay scheme, and 10% receive paid maternity leave from their employer. So do we need statutory requirements to address these issues, or would other measures help as well?
Thanks, Deputy Dara.
Thanks, Deputy. So I think a lot of it comes down to do we value earlier services as an essential public service? Right? And if we do, we have to make sure that we put in the adequate investment so that it is affordable and that is high quality.
Oh, you've gone mute now, Dara.
Sorry, apologies. Yeah. I think it's how we value the sector, and is it a vital public service? And do we kind of make that decision for the benefits of children and obviously families? And if we do, then how do we make sure that we put the money in where we get where the state is confident that it's able to kind of achieve its policy goals? And that's high quality and it's an affordability, and that obviously has to be delivered in sustainable services. So certainly one of the recent developments is the establishment of a joint labour committee for early years, and that means that the union employers can negotiate rates of pay for the different grades across the sector. And that would give the state the confidence that if it invests additional money, it knows that money can go towards pay if that's what it's there for. And of course, other money is needed for the general sustainability and affordability within the sector as well. But I think and that's kind of essentially the decision that we have to make. If we think it's an important service, are we going to invest in it or not? So if we don't, we're left with the kind of existing kind of crisis that's there of high fees, which is driving up the cost of living, and low pay, which is forcing high staff turnover, and it is impacting on quality and sustainability.
Okay, thanks. I
have a question for each group. I'll be really quick with the questions. So for the Dublin 8 After School Alliance, thank you for highlighting the importance of after-school services as an equality measure aimed at reducing the gap of educational disadvantage. This shows the absolutely essential role of educational and social centres that support young people. You're rightly calling for access to community after-school projects for all children in DESH areas and marginalised rural communities. But what are the main steps that can be taken to help achieve this? And I know you mentioned long-term sustainable funding, but specifically, like, which departments, what can we do to make this happen? And then for the Urlingford community childcare, you explained how the National Childcare Scheme has negatively impacted thousands of children from disadvantaged and marginalised families. In particular, you show how an unemployed parent or parents are entitled to less or no subsidised hour of childcare compared to working parents. So what needs to immediately happen to address that situation?
Okay, we'll start with Ms O'Connor and then we'll move on to Ms Quinn, and if anybody else wants to come in.
Yeah, I think as has been stated, community after schools have kind of fallen between the gap. As Amy had said earlier, there is provision for the under sixes, and then within the youth work provision for the 10 plus. So for us, I mean, there are principles and values that probably sit within the youth work setting, but it's not to say there could be childcare provision or child provision within the Department of Children as well, because we're not childcare in that sense. But for the last number of years, there have been talks around regulations and qualifications for community after schools that we really would welcome. And this year, after schools had to register under TUSLA and submit policies and procedures to become regulated. However, we would also welcome a child-centred or youth work practice approach where we can develop that practice and kind of continuously improve and develop that, and then maybe look for the most appropriate kind of community after-school funding source within that.
Ms. Quinn, do you want to come in on this one?
Thanks very much, Deputy. I suppose in this one and in the one in relation to Senator McGrain in relation to qualifications, and I suppose that is something that is being looked at under the Workforce Development Plan. It is about bringing in qualifications, because I suppose there is a growing recognition in terms of the type of work that's happening in school-age childcare services, and that it is about supporting children in educational disadvantage. It's about supporting children in social disadvantage, emotional disadvantage, cultural disadvantage, etc. And that is quite a very complex skill set that is required. It's something that will need to be phased in over time, because obviously you've just heard about the crisis that is in early years, and obviously by introducing qualifications in school-age childcare, then there's going to be a crisis there in itself if it's not kind of phased in an appropriate way. But I would say over time we'll be looking at qualification requirements comparable to what's in early years, given the complexity of the work that's done there. I would say in relation to both for Deputy Cairns in terms of where we'd situate or what needs to happen now. And I think part of what needs to happen now is we need to redefine what school-age childcare is. Very much under legislation, it is about support for parents while they're working, and which doesn't have children at its centre, at its core. So I think we need to create a new vision for school-age childcare, and it needs to have children at its core. And obviously, it is going to be about supporting families, to engage in workforce as well. But that cannot be the main thrust of it. We do have to have children's rights at the core of it. School-age childcare, right? So in terms of the supports that are needed, and with the NCS, children are in crisis can be sponsored and they can get their needs met. Children whose parents are working, a parent or parents are working, can get their needs met in terms of enhanced hours, during term time. But those children whose parent or parents are not working, for whatever multitude of reasons, the child doesn't get support. And I know that part of the reason is because we want to, kind of break the cycle of poverty and the intergenerational poverty, etc. But that needs a multi-pronged approach. And one of the prongs can be about supporting the parent or parents in whatever they need, to be able to engage in training or education or work. But also, we need to look at what does the child in the here and now need. This child has one childhood, and this is about early intervention and prevention. We will be spending a lot more later on, and the child will have lost that potential for the rich childhood that they should and could have. So it needs to change now. And this is not obviously, there are community service representatives here, and the huge work. But this is about children all over the country, and as my colleague Mick kind of alluded to, the targeted schemes were opened out to private providers, and the NCS is open to private providers, because there are pockets around the country where children are in, maybe not in crisis, but they are in need. And I think we need to move from the crisis model where we'll only really kind of support those families when they are in crisis. There is an action plan for school-age childcare, and there's a lot looking at being done, in relation to school-age childcare. Unfortunately, very often it gets lumped in with early years, and it's at two very different stages. So we need to stop that. And I think in the meantime, while they're looking at a review of a new model for school-age childcare, whether they'll have a DESH type model or whatever they will, that will be a few years in development. So I think we need to look at any child that could have availed of supports under the targeted schemes. We need to now open, because we've got siblings on those legacy targeted schemes, and the younger child now cannot access it under the NCS. That has to stop. And that's looking at that in the immediate, while we're working on the best model for children all over, and making sure that any services that are providing for those needs of children do not close, that they have to be supported wherever they are, because these are absolutely vital services in terms of that early intervention and prevention. And possibly, if we're looking under Department of Children has children and youth. And those play skills, those youth work skills, those early year skills, all of that, I mean, it's very complex in terms of who could work, and it's a multidisciplinary approach. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Ms. Quinn. I do need to move it on. There's still a few speakers. Deputy Murnane O'Connor.